Motion.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilwoman Winton, supported by Councilman Bezura. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Bezura.
the budget amendment includes on page 2 capital outlay TVA for I think some carryover items. Page 1 has police capital outlay, and I'm assuming that that police capital outlay relates to item 6.3. And I just want to make sure that that 6.1 is necessary to make 6.3 happen before we vote on it. And the question is the funding source for 6.3. I thought we typically did this through forfeiture funds, and is that an option? Is there funding available? Does it have to be via a budget amendment in item 6.1?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we have used forfeiture in the past. I think the concern that the chief has, and I know he's here, he can speak to it himself, but the forfeiture accounts are really low at this time. We're waiting for several cases to be adjudicated. And so the concern is that if we spend it all down, we won't have any in forfeiture remaining. There's probably another 8 to 10 vehicles that are coming to this body at some point in the very near future. We have to get the interceptors changed out as quick as possible. We're spending too much time in repairing them and money. There's a lot of problems with the motors that we're experiencing. So we've identified 15 to 20 police vehicles that need to be changed out this year. So, one strategy could be to take it from forfeiture now, but we'll likely be in this situation next time when we're buying more vehicles. So I think the chief felt more comfortable trying to leave some monies in the forfeiture account because that does then remain dedicated to police qualified items only. So I think that was the general rule of thumb. But the budget amendment will be required to approve the next, or 6.3 item.
If we auction off the vehicles we're replacing, since we're using general fund money to purchase these vehicles, would that money go into the general fund, or would it depend on what we bought those vehicles with?
Yeah, I think that's the answer, Mr. Chairman. If we use forfeiture money, I think it would likely have to go back to forfeiture. Jason is here. Is that correct, Jason? That's correct. Yeah, so that we would have to look at how they were procured originally and then determine where the money goes. Does that make sense, Councilman Bezura?
It does. We don't have a lot of detail on 6.3, so I wasn't aware. I wasn't even sure if these were add-ons or if they're replacements, if there's trade-ins, if there's auctions. And I definitely didn't know that after that there was going to be 6 or 8 more, so it sounds like we are going to need a variety of funding sources if we do in fact purchase 15 to 20 vehicles.
Yeah, I'll invite Chief Blair down to speak to the details.
This is part of 6.3.
Yeah, but that's it in a nutshell. But the chief can probably elaborate a little bit more on the overall condition of the interceptors. I think most police departments are finding that, and as you guys are aware, every department downriver had transitioned to the interceptors, and we're all learning the hard way that it was not a good decision.
Those are the Explorers, right?
Yeah. Okay. They're the police. They titled them interceptors to make them specifically for police departments, but they're really a glorified Explorer. So, Chief Blair, if you're available.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Council, Mr. Mayor, wherever you went. I brought Lieutenant Jeff Admission as well. He kind of oversees our fleet, so I'll answer some questions and some technical issues. I'll have him address them with you. So,
I got a real quick question. We're possibly replacing the interceptors with Chevy Yukons. My question is, why do we need such a large vehicle for that? To replace. I mean, is that what? I know automobile companies specifically make a vehicle for law enforcement. So, I mean, is that the vehicle there now? I mean, it used to be the Crown Vic, then it went to the Taurus, now it seems to kind of went to the Explorer, now we're going into a Yukon, which to me is a pretty big vehicle.
Yeah.
And probably consumes a lot of gasoline.
Yeah, there's a number of reasons. We've been asked questions about going to more car styles. Crown Vics are no longer an option for us. They were very successful for many years. You're running into equipment issues inside cars, basic size. Our officers are big, the equipment they carry. We all have laptops in there. They'll have weapons inside the car. Our camera systems, it's eating up the space in the interior. So we have to have cars that are big enough. Also, there's safety factors. If you have a small car in there, you know, it's not as safe as something big like our Tahoes that we like to go to. So main issue we're running into with our Explorers engine, you're talking V6s. I know we've had some water pump issues as well. So we've kind of transitioned to something we feel is more durable. The Tahoe has that V8 in there, obviously very reliable. So those are the car that we've seen many police departments throughout the country head to. We've noticed not only here in the state of Michigan, but out the country, our Explorers are having a hard time. So it's not just an issue here in the city of Taylor. I think that V6 was behind a lot of the issues. If you have something else.
As far as the V6, we have two different types of V6s in our current Explorer fleet and F-150 fleet. We have an EcoBoost, which is a turbocharged motor, and then we have a non-EcoBoost, which is a regular V6 motor.
Okay.
We've noticed in the EcoBoost motors, we've blown turbochargers, water pumps, and it all travels out to the exhaust decalent converters. With the non-EcoBoost, you know, some transmissions blowing constantly. So currently I have 3 in the shop with blown transmissions. I have 1 with a blown turbocharger. We have 1 that's been down for 13 weeks. We've taken them to 3 different dealerships to get repaired, and each dealership's reporting the same problem. They're not getting parts back from the board. They cannot get them. So you can't afford to have major drivetrain issues with these vehicles and not be able to get them repaired. So we started looking at the Chevy. The Chevy drivetrain is the same they've been using for years. The 5.3's been around forever. State police have used them. One that's using them for several years, they lost. We went out and toured the 21 Tahoe. It's police specific. They made it for the seats, you know, help our backs, the way they contoured them, molded them around our weapons. I mean, there's a lot of room for storage, like he was saying. Each car's got it's got computers, it's got 2 docks for the in-car cameras. All the electronics put in these vehicles now, it's just eating up room. And the Explorers are very small. The Tahoe is also built on a truck frame. Unfortunately, in the police work, we have to go fast sometimes, and the car crashes can be devastating. Now, with a truck frame, you have a lot better chance of surviving. It seems like a better car. So using an old engine, the 5.3 liters been around forever. I've personally been in the Explorer for a long time. I don't have the specifics on gas mileage, but it's not impressive. And I personally drive a GM truck, and gas mileage is about 16 miles a gallon. So they're comparable as far as gas mileage.
Yeah, we did have a small problem. Some of the Explorers didn't come with skid plates, and a skid plate, basically, without getting too technical, just covers the oil pan and transmission down there. Well, we don't have to worry about that with the Tahoe. So we had an issue where, you know, we had someone hit a curb, and then you lose an oil pan, and then next thing you know, you're losing an engine. So all the creature comforts are on these Tahoes, and we're hoping that this is going to help us avoid some of the repairs that we've been seeing with our Explorers.
If you look at the Explorer sheets, did anybody not receive a mileage report? So if you look at it, we have most of them are 2018. The highest one has 97,000 miles on it already. Now, if you include the idle time hours on that, using Ford's conversion, these cars are actually 200-something thousand miles because the idle time is where
because they're running, but they're sitting.
Yeah, absolutely. We're on scene. They're accumulating idle hours. So, in the end, the V6 engine is just not taking the abuse that the police work is giving us.
Councilman Rowe?
John, Chief, aren't they missing a few 100,000 miles on these cars? How are we doing on stop signs in the floorboards?
Yeah, you guys don't know about that. We used to put stop signs for the floorboards because they'd rust out. We don't have rust problems anymore, Councilman. Cars are built a little different, but yeah.
I'm just getting a kick out of it. We could talk many more, but we'll leave it alone.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Missouri?
I heard something about an auction. What's what's gonna happen. So I'm assuming all these that are highlighted in red are the ones that we're replacing? Are they trade-ins to what we're buying, or are we auctioning them off?
What we typically do is auction them, we'll take the equipment out. And this is why we thought about moving to a different model, because when Ford changed the body design of the new Explorer, none of the equipment besides the lights will transfer. It's all the expensive cages and everything. So we're gonna take those out as part of the auction.
Will that stuff be transferred? You know, can we transfer it to the Yukon or
The
not?
things we can transfer is computer docks, camera systems, some of the internal electronic equipment we can take from car to car. But the cages, the seats, specialized stuff we can't, they're car specific.
So those could be left on the vehicles and auction off, because there are other police departments that would want these. Not everyone runs as much as we do here in the city of Taylor. We're very busy, obviously. So some of your smaller departments that aren't nearly as busy, they could take these cars, have them appropriately fixed, and probably would suit their needs.
Well, speaking of, you know, I just want to say, you know, to make me a little more comfortable, and, you know, we're talking about maybe bringing some down the road. You know, we do have a budget coming in July, so I would like to see those vehicles budgeted. If the sales of those vehicles go into police forfeiture, I would especially really like to see that money come from forfeiture to purchase more vehicles. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't want it to go empty, but we don't want our general fund to either. You know,
Right.
we're trying to protect that the best we can.
Well, Jason's an expert with that. He'll tell you that money does go back to forfeiture, and it has been. We can't mess with that at all.
Councilman Johnson?
Chief, you mentioned the runs that you guys make. Would you let the audience know what kind of runs we made last year? I believe it was upwards of...
Well, you're talking about calls for service. You're right around 40,000 calls for service. However, the way we calculate calls for service are not unlike some other departments. When we do traffic stops, we don't count those as calls for service. You're looking over 50,000 traffic stops. So you're roughly in the neighborhood of 100,000 actual, what we would consider, or most departments would consider calls for service. So that puts us ahead of many departments in the entire country.
Are we going to move any of those vehicles, the lower mileage before we sell them over to the auxiliary chief?
That's a great question. Yes, absolutely. They're, our auxiliary use our old cars, if everyone isn't aware of that, and they're in dire need. We plan on shipping over at least 2 of them to them.